Good morning, and welcome to the Universalist Church, in which love is the spirit. We are glad you are here in the sanctuary, or anywhere in the world, especially those visiting or returning after time away. I am Lisa Smith-Horn, one of your representatives on the Board of Trustees. If you are a visitor, we hope you'll talk with our welcome team or visit our webpage, www.westhartforduu.org, to learn more about us. Our guest book or online contact page will help you get onto our electronic mailing list. Our electronic communications are the best way for us to stay connected. We look forward to helping you become a part of the Universalist Church. We are in the seasons of colds, flus, and COVID, with many more people feeling ill right now. Masks are always welcome here, and we encourage you to stay up to date with your vaccinations. If you are unvaccinated or would like a mask, our ushers have some that we're happy to share. After worship, we'll have fellowship and Fist Call and through Zoom. If you need help finding your way to Fist Call for our fellowship hour, any member of the church will be happy to guide you. Just look for someone wearing a Universalist Church name tag. If you can find the link, you can find the link for Zoom in your weekly news or our Breeze calendar. If you aren't getting the weekly news, please sign up for it on our website. And now we have Reverend Joy Christi will make an announcement.
If you have signed up for a focus group today, the focus group will be meeting in the program center at 11:30. So we look forward to seeing you there to give us feedback. Thank you.
And now I invite you to take a moment to make your mobile phone silent. Turn off your email and put away your keyboards and settle in for worship.
Good morning. May you always bounce back. What I thought of doing is getting a whole bunch of balls and throwing them at you this morning, but I decided against it. So if you have a chalice at home, all of those who are sitting in front of your computer screens or television sets, please bring it out with the matches and light our chalice with us. The flame that comes from this oil flickers, resilient before us each week. Its consistency can remind us how our resistance to power, based in injustice, hurtful choices, and deceptive practices, does not build community. Our inner resilience, however, calls us to build on our resistance, to move us, to help us work towards the beloved community we vision ourselves to be. As the song we just heard reminds us, like this flame, we can always bounce back. We can always choose to resist that which detracts and does not serve our journey toward our own inner wholeness. So as the light from this chalice burns bright this day, may we be reminded to resist power and be resilient in all our actions. May we be grateful that we have this community that calls us to go deeper and to respond to who we are called to be and become each and every new day. Our opening hymn is hymn number 219 in the gray hymnal. I'm sorry. The hymn is 360 in the gray hymnal. Please rise in body or in spirit in the sanctuary or wherever you are as we sing together. Please join me now in speaking the words of our affirmation, our covenant, as printed in the order of service. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Ricky the rock that couldn't roll. Over the lake and out past the bay was a green grassy hill where the rocks came to play. They would race to the top to take in the view, then roll their way down, the way rocks love to do. There were Kip, Pip, and Chester, and Marvin the boulder. Ignatius played too, though he was much older. And a group called the Pebbles never ever sat still, zigzagging their way up and over the hill. Kai was a meteorite and not from this planet, and Maya was lava, but taken for granted. Thank goodness you got that. Stu was the smart one, Parker the clown, the grumpy old Albert rolled round with a frown. Gabby was sassy, Lisi had flair, Emma was giggly, and Hud had black hair. But the one trait that seemed to be shared by them all was that every rock was shaped like a ball. And because they were round, they could easily roll through the grass, past the lake, up and over the knoll. Except for poor Ricky, who quietly sat. You see, Rick couldn't roll because one side was flat. His friends didn't get it. "Come roll," they would chant. So Ricky tried, but replied, "I'm sorry, I can't." But the rocks were determined. They were sure they could solve Ricky's flat-sided problem and help him revolve. So Marvin the boulder, with his impressive physique, carried Rick all the way to the hill's grassy peak. But then he pushed him downhill, yelling, "Keep rolling, kid." But Rick didn't roll. He just kind of slid. Well, the rocks weren't done, not by a mile. Surely this next try would get Rick to smile. They stuck rubber balls all over Rick, using big gobs of glue to get them to stick. They were proud of themselves. "This will work," they announced, but Ricky still couldn't roll. Now he just sort of bounced. Well, they pushed and they pulled, trying every which way to get Rick to roll, but by the end of the day, nothing had worked, just like Rick expected, and he ended up feeling depressed and dejected. "It's no use," Ricky sighed. "There just isn't a way, so I'll sit off to the side and watch you all play." But his friends wouldn't quit. "We're here for you, brother, and we'll get you to roll one way or another." So they pondered and thought, each straining their brain, till they looked up and saw it was starting to rain. And that's when it hit that smart stone named Stu. "Eureka," he shouted, "I know just what to do." He explained to them how they would get Rick to tumble. "My plan is pure genius." Stu wasn't too humble. So they carried our hero down the road, about a mile, to the lake where they gathered up mud they could pile on the flat side of Rick, creating a mound that they shaped, smoothed, and sculpted until it was round. After the rain, with the sun in the sky, They left him to bake till the mud was all dry. They gathered up vines and one colorful feather, and they wrapped it all round Rick to keep it together. When the last knot was tied and the work was all done, the only step left was for Rick to have fun. They stood back and watched, feeling nervous and tense, as Rick breathed in deep with increasing suspense. He moved slowly at first, testing out his new mold, and then, for the first time, Ricky the Rock rolled. So, Bria, the ladybug who'd been there from the start, felt a surge of pure joy swell up in her heart. She thought as she watched her friends play on the hill that there's always a way if there's also a will. And she said to herself as Ricky rolled down the slope, when you're surrounded by love, you always have hope. Illustrations by Joy Christi.
And now seeing our children out to their class. We will keep a place for you wherever you may go. Wings and sails for nothing, what we've come to know. Oh, in peace, bring love to us at will. We will keep a place for you till you reach home. The voluntary offering, the sharing of our resources for our shared work as a religious community, is a spiritual practice for us. By offering your time, talent, and treasure to this community, you help us serve the members, friends, and wider community of this congregation. As part of that service, we share our general offering each and every week with organizations that do the work in the world that brings us ever closer to creating the beloved community of which we are a part. This month, we share our offering with Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism, also known as BLUU. BLUU was founded in 2015 at the Movement for Black Lives convening in Cleveland, Ohio. The dozen or so Black Unitarian Universalists in attendance imagined a cohesive, vibrant community of Black Unitarian Universalists. BLUU evolved from several conversations among Black UUs at that gathering. BLUU is committed to expanding the power and capacity of Black UUs within Unitarian Universalism, providing support, information, and resources for Black Unitarian Universalists, and justice-making and liberation for Black people through our faith. To give electronically, please use the QR codes on your order of service, the links in the description, or those on our website to make your donation to our offering. Here in the sanctuary, our offering will now be gratefully received. May these gifts sustain the work we do in this community and in the wider community of which we are a part. Thank you for your generosity. Please rise now, if you can, in body or spirit, as we speak our congregational reading, number 660, to live deliberately. I will speak the words in Roman type and ask you to speak those in italics. Why should we live in such a hurry and waste of life?
We are determined to be starved before we are hungry.
I wish to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life.
I wish to learn what life has to teach, and not, when I come to die, discover that I have not lived.
I do not wish to live what is not life. Living is so dear.
Nor do I wish to practice resignation unless it is quite necessary.
I wish to live deep and suck out all the marrow of life.
I want to cut a raw swath, to drive life into a corner and reduce it to its lowest terms.
If it proves to be mean, then to get the whole and genuine meanness of it and publish its meanness to the world.
Or if this is line, to know it by experience and to be able to give a true account of it.
Let's join now in singing our doxology. Be seated. I have some delightful news for you this day. Julio M. has returned home to Vernon from Jerome House and his rehabilitation there. He thanks everyone for their cards and well wishes and is grateful for your support following his surgery. He continues to totally appreciate the love of this community. Sophie E. has been able to walk from upstairs in her home to the lower level by herself. She has even gone out to the grocery store and doctor's office in her new purple wheelchair. She is hoping to join us for worship in the near future, so look for her. Outside our community, please continue to hold in your thoughts and prayers all in Russia and the Ukraine, affected by the continuing war there. As Pope Francis noted, may the leaders of those countries come to a time when they sit and negotiate a peaceful resolution. For all those still struggling with loss of so much in Turkey and Syria due to the earthquake and its aftershocks. And finally, let us offer our support in thought and prayer to the Carter family as our former president and his family allow hospice to help him in his transition. As we begin our moments of silence, let us listen to these words from James Baldwin. If one really wishes to know how justice is administered in a country, one does not question the policemen, the lawyers, the judges, or the protected members of the middle class. One goes to the unprotected, those precisely who need the law's protection the most, and then listens to their testimony. And now, please join me in a moment of silence. Please join in singing Spirit of Life.
Spirit of
Good morning. Oh, we can do better than that. Good morning. All right. My name is Ty Feaster. I'm the Social Action Coordinator here at the church. And our first reading is from the preface and the afterword in the book My Selma by Willie Mae Brown. I write these stories of a Selma I knew and loved. A Selma that brought me joy, troubled me, and baptized me into racial injustice and into the race for justice. I write these stories through the voice of the people who lived at the time I was growing up in Selma. We lived together, schooled together, churched together, fought together for the same rights as our white brethren who denied us the freedom we were born with. The civil rights freedom of a people separated by color, ignored by color, despised by color, murdered by color. But the color would not fade in Selma. That color would not run when it rained. That color did not mix with the white because it stood out when it should have known its place in the South. I write about Selma because our lives have historical precedent in shaping the future. I write so that you may hear, see, smell, and feel the injustice of ignorance, but also the sweetness of everyday life illuminated in my words. My Selma was a place that emitted the rich, clean odor of black dirt and sour clay that smelled of pork sausages, ham, and biscuits. The breakfast scents all blowing through the dew-covered Johnson grass and across foggy highways at 5 a.m. on any morning. My Selma was beautiful, with fields of white cotton, corn, long sweet potato vines, and watermelon patches. With untamed land in abundance, thickets where no man had ever walked, and red clay roads where wild game crossed with hunters and dogs in high pursuit. But I also grew up in a place where Negroes were looked on as less than the people they were, less than human beings by many of their white citizens. I grew up in a place where white men and white women rolled through Negro neighborhoods in posses on horses, dressed in white sheets with pointed hoods, and carrying torches of fire used to set shacks, houses ablaze, and ignite standing crosses on lawns to terrorize Negroes or white nigger lovers, and set fear in the children. My narration opens up the wounds and the itch, the scar that I and Selma's people carry. My voice will not be quiet, nor will I quiet the voice of those who gave me the talk. My voice is their voice. I will never forget my Selma. And here's where hope for the future lies. Hope is in the telling. Hope is in our voices and in our stories that we share as a tool of freedom. Hope is in our stories that free us and allow us to reach into the hearts of others and give them the freedom to speak as well.
Our second reading is from Resilience, The Science of Mastering Life's Greatest Challenges by Stephen Southwick and Dennis Cherney. Most of us, at some point, will be struck by one or more major traumas: violent crime, domestic violence, rape, child abuse, a serious automobile accident, the sudden death of a loved one, a debilitating disease, a natural disaster, or war. If you are very lucky, then you have never encountered any of these misfortunes, but most likely you will one day. Many people will find ways to meet the challenge and continue with purposeful lives. For a period after their ordeal, they may become distressed, but in time, they will bounce back and carry on. As we worked with traumatized individuals, we often wondered about survivors who seemed to somehow cope effectively with the negative effects of stress, those who did not develop stress-related symptoms, or who, if they developed symptoms, carried on successfully nevertheless. The term resilient described these survivors well. What is resilience? In the physical sciences, materials and objects are termed resilient if they resume their original shape upon being bent or stretched. In people, resilience refers to the ability to bounce back after encountering difficulty. The American Psychological Association defines it as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, and even significant sources of stress, such as family and relationship problems, serious health problems, or workplace and financial stresses. Resilience is complex, multidimensional, and dynamic in nature. While experts define resilience in a variety of ways, a common thread in their definitions is the ability to weather adversity. This does not mean being impervious to adversity. A resilient person may be deeply affected by a traumatic event and may experience psychological symptoms, but it does mean being able to carry on with the important facets of one's life in spite of painful and distressing symptoms. In some definitions, resilience also entails the ability to grow from adverse events and find meaning in them. In the words of Elizabeth S. Lucas, a protege of the neurologist, psychiatrist, and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl, the forces of fate that bear down on humanity and threaten to break us also have the capacity to ennoble us.
Regina Chalice.
Have any of you ever tried to find Ricky the Rock? One with just one flat side? As it turns out, it's pretty hard actually to find a rock with one flat side. Just so you know, there are several wonderful quarries in our magnificent state that you might investigate and explore when you feel like hiking or even looking for Ricky rocks in your leisure moments. I begin with acknowledging that one-sided flat rocks are exceptional because the concepts of resistance and resilience are connected to that flat-sided rock and its uniqueness. This is the final Sunday of February, the month where we celebrate Black history. And as such, I wanted to not only remind us of that unique heritage, but acknowledge how long and how difficult it has been, and actually still is, to be an African American in our white supremacist-oriented culture. In preparation for today, as is always my style, and my wife can attest to that, I read books and articles, I listen to music and its history, and I view films. I cried substantially in preparation for today, as I felt the pain, the suffering, the frustration, and the jubilations of so many who have gone before us, as well as those continuing today. Each person or group trying to make a dent in the societal values and lenses through which we attempt to see one another touched my heart and soul. Today, I stand before you wearing a stole given to me by my mentor, Reverend Dr. Clark Olson, from Congressman John Louise. When I wrap this around my neck, I can feel both of these men standing beside me, encouraging me to speak my truth, as well as asking me to challenge you to speak yours. In our opening song, sung so well by Emma, thank you, Emma, the words spoke clearly about life, not always going as planned. How one just has to keep going, doing the best that you can. We were encouraged in the song lyrics to take time to reset. And finally, in keeping with the idea of rocks and quarries, we were encouraged to pick ourselves up and dust ourselves off. And yes, bounce back, even if you're a flat-sided rock. Both Reverend Clark Olson and Congressman John Louise truly lived those words, bouncing back several times during their civil rights work. They walked across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, arm in arm, both on March 7th, 1965, and then again on the 50th anniversary of that faithful day. Millie Mae Brown, in the reading read by Ty, spoke to us in our first reading in these words: I write about Selma because our lives have historical precedence in shaping the future. I write so that you may hear, see, smell, and feel the injustice of ignorance, but also the sweetness of everyday life illuminated by my words. One of the books I had the pleasure of reading in preparation for today, and I highly recommend it, is Driving the Green Book, a road trip through the living history of Black resistance. It is multiple stories of what it has taken, and in many ways still takes place today, for African Americans as they travel throughout our highways and byways in this country to get from point A to point B. If you have not heard about the Green Book, I strongly recommend that you do a little research and discover how critical this book was in the years from 1937 to 1967 for the survival and ability to travel for African Americans in this country. There is even a film of the same title on Netflix. And if you get a chance to go to the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture in New York, you can see copies of the Green Book there. It's about this big, this wide. Its size is like a comic book size. And the author of Driving the Green Book, in collaboration with two other colleagues, sets out in his book to drive from Detroit to New Orleans in as many of the routes as possible to replicate the experiences and encounters of folks familiar with that publication. So, Driving the Green Book is a story of having stories told to the people who were crossing the country from the original people who did the crossing of the country for real. It is a book that explains the concept of Black resistance in a manner that left me spellbound, and as is usual for me, both wordless and amazed at how my brothers and sisters of color have continued to keep on keeping on, have chosen to bounce back and roll on when everything surrounding them was flattened, when rolling forward seemed completely impossible. My overall observations in my limited lifespan thus far, in viewing Black resistance from the various lenses I have been given the privileges to do so, is that Black resistance has provided the African American in our country a phenomenal resilience. As our second reading from the book Resilience noted, in people, resilience refers to the ability to bounce back after encountering difficulty. My, how many difficulties can one culture absorb? The American Psychological Association defines it as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, and even significant sources of stress. But the author of our second reading also notes that it is a complex, multidimensional, and dynamic characteristic, resilience. It also entails the ability to grow from adverse events and find meaning in them. I suggest some of us spend some time talking with our colleagues of color to learn about their resilience. The authors of Resilience provided not only insights of their 20 years of study, but a section within the book explaining each of the 10 what they called resilient factors that were the results of their studies. I'm merely going to outline those characteristics here. But if you're really interested, each chapter in that book, Resilience, explains each and every one of these factors. They are realistic optimism, facing fear, moral compass, religion and spirituality, social support, resilient role models, my dear Clark and my dear John Lewis, physical fitness, brain fitness, cognitive and emotional flexibility, and meaning and purpose. In reading about each of these factors, I am able to witness within the pages of the stories shared in Driving the Green Book, living examples of each of these factors. And just as Ricky the Rock's companions helped him push through the dust, the mud, the uncertainty of the slide, and found a way to help him roll, I challenge each of you, as Black History Month concludes, to ask yourselves the following questions, which, by the way, were posed in the final chapter of Driving the Green Book. What have you learned this Black History Month? They didn't put in this Black History Month, obviously, about African American history that you never knew before? What do you think was the source of strength and resilience in the African Americans that you read about that are part of your life? What have you experienced during this month that made you think deeper about a current event? What about that event surprised or shocked you? Why do you think this part of American history is being once again pervasively ignored or forbidden to be examined? The author notes every question seemed to take us back to the inner strength, optimism, and other capacities that stopped African Americans from being crushed on the streets of their hometowns, on the highways across the country, anywhere they were moving from one place to the next, under the weighty inconveniences, aggravations, embarrassments, and harassment innate in our white supremacist ideas that were so widely accepted during the years of 1936 to 1967 by so much of America. And my question after that quote is, has it changed a whole lot or not? And what are we, what am I doing about it? We kept remembering and quoting Maya Angelou's poem about history, says the author. The poem they were quoting was Still I Rise, in which Maya says, we rise again like dust, like air, like hope. May this day and week ahead give each one of us opportunities to better know the history of Black resistance that moves all of us into the wonders of resilience and calls us to roll on. May we challenge ourselves to provide all that is needed to do the rolling, surrounded by love and filled with hope, like Bria the ladybug voiced. Blessed be, and may it be so. Please join me in singing our closing hymn, 318, We Would Be One. Let us speak together our unison benediction. Engage with the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Honor all beings. Please remain seated for our postlude.